Hello, my name's Mr. McFloyd and welcome to this revision resource for Gillian Clarke's poem Catrin. I chose to start the video with a video of a baby boy being born. You can see his lovely smiley face there, and clearly there's a strong bond between him and his parents. You can see on the right hand side of the screen the little clip that severs off the umbilical cord, which would be used to feed the child when the baby is in the baby's womb. As you can see, this has been cut, and as the cord has been severed from its mother, as the baby becomes more independent. Certainly, I might suggest that this is indeed what the poem Catrin is all about. As we know, this is assessed in three ways. You've got on the left the assessment objective 1, the understanding of the poem and its themes. On the right hand side you've got its context, which is when it was written and the way the audience engage with it, and perhaps most importantly in the centre we have an exploration of its meanings created through language, form and structure. How exactly has Clarke made certain decisions to explore the meaning of love and affection within her poem? Gillian Clarke, then, we need to know a bit about her for our context marks. Well, I can tell you she was born in 1937 and has 3 children, a girl and 2 lovely boys. The girl is indeed the topic of her poem Catrin. I can tell you that she said she wrote the poem in response to the question, why did my baby have to become a teenager? This is a question that many parents face as their once lovely, beautiful baby begins to argue with them in later life, asserting their independence. Traditional women's roles include being a mother. This is alongside being a wife and domestic homeowner. This role is quite tough and difficult, an area that Clarke feels does not get much recognition. In traditional fiction, the mother is kind, warm-hearted, a friendly, caring kind of person. But in this poem, Clarke explores a very different side of being a mother, one that's quite tiring. It requires quite a lot of determination and resilience as the mother fights the daughter for what's best for the daughter to do. Okay, so that's some of our context marks. We had again 3 facts about Clarke. Let's take a look at the poem itself then. You can see the poem printed on the screen in full, and there is going to be a visual representation video in the top right and an audio for you to listen to as the poem is read through.
Catrin, I can remember you, child, as I stood in a hot white room at the window watching the people and cars taking turn at the traffic light. I can remember you, our first fierce confrontation, the tight, red rope of love which we both fought over. It was a square environmental blank, disinfectant of paintings or toys. I wrote all over the walls with my words, coloured the clean squares with the wild, tender circles of our struggle to become separate. We want, we shouted, to be two, to be ourselves. Neither won nor lost the struggle. In the glass tank clouded with feelings which changed us both. Still I'm fighting you off as you stand there with your straight, strong, long brown hair, your rosy, defiant glare, bringing up from the heart's pool that old rope, tightening about my life, training love and conflict. As you ask, may you skate in the dark for 1 more hour.
A beautiful poem then, exploring the love and affection between a child and their mother.
Catrin.
Let's take another look at a different clip then revolving this poem, and which may help you understand it in a bit more depth.
I can remember you, child, as I stood in a hot, white room at the window, watching the people and the cars taking turns at the traffic lights. I can remember you, our first fierce confrontation, the tight red rope of love which we both fought over. It was a square environmental blank, disinfected of paintings or toys. I wrote all over the walls with my words, coloured the clean squares with the wild, tender circles of our struggle to become separate. We shouted, to be two, to be ourselves. Neither won nor lost the struggle, with a glass tank clouded with feelings which changed us both. Still, I am fighting you off as you stand there with your straight, strong, long brown hair and your rosy, defiant glare, bringing up from the heart's blue that old rope, tightening about my life, trailing love and conflict, as you ask, may you skate in the dark for one more hour.
Perhaps there, some of the imagery suggests perhaps a darker side to the poem, one of stress, one of anxiety, one of exasperation, as the mother struggles to deal with the conflict with her daughter. Now we're going to look at each part of the poem and some notes around it. The colour red represents the structural notes, and the white boxes are those that link to language. The child's name forms the title, not mentioned again to suggest this could be any child the poem could be discussing or talking about. The repetition of I can remember you at the start and then in the middle of the start of the poem suggests that this is a deep, almost forgotten memory, as if the birth was a long time ago, or maybe it just seems that way. The adjective white in line 2 suggests innocence and purity of the young baby as it is first been born. The word fierce or phrase, fierce confrontation, hints at why the poem was written. The argument the poem is trying to look past to get back to the love she has for her daughter. She wants to ignore the small conflicts they have and focus on the beauty of the relationship. The poet is nervous as she knows her life is about to change as she stands in a hot, white enjambment room. Okay, so maybe she's worried about the life she's going to have after the baby's been born. The red rope of love, featured heavily in some of the videos I've just shown, is the umbilical cord, the colour of love and anger, and a metaphor for the tie that binds them so closely together. Now let's take a look at the middle of the poem. It features a detailed description of the hospital as the mother and child start from a blank beginning, as if both lives are just starting. The language is repeatedly simplistic to show the simplicity of their feelings and the simplicity, perhaps, of the beginnings of their relationship. The words are deliberately enjambed, which means chopped into pieces, suggesting the poet's lines are being stopped halfway through by the screams or arguments of the child. The stanzas are split, perhaps suggesting the beginning of the poem features the youth of the child, the baby that was born, and the second half of the poem suggesting the more teenage years of the child as they grow up. The tender circles mentioned could be tender circles of love, like, for example, a wedding ring, or a mother looking at the child's hand, drawing circles in its palm, or indeed it could be the contractions during labour. The statement at the end of the first stanza, to be one, to be ourselves, could be suggesting that the love they have is unchangeable. Both fight to be individual. We be two, but we also be ourselves. The end of the poem begins to suggest that actually both of their lives have changed through the passage of time. The lack of rhyming suggests a more adult theme to the poem, reflecting the bond between the two and avoiding something sounding too childish. The struggle of birth is still happening over and over again, as the poet states, "I am still fighting you off," as if this argument they have when she's a teenager just seems to go on and on and on, perhaps spoiling the love they once had. The rhythm, alliteration and assonance are used all the way through to suggest the growing feelings of a bond and strength between a mother and child. At the conclusion of the poem, this suggests the fight they were having was over something trivial, something simple, something silly or childish. The idea of the child skating, just wanting to stay out in the dark just for a little bit longer to play with their friends or enjoy the skating. The repetition near the end of the poem of "old rope" refers back to the cord and the tie that will forever bond the two people together. To summarise then, the poem Catrin. It is a love poem about a mother describing the bond between herself and her daughter as she grows up. The speaker is arguing with her daughter over going skating and remembers the bond they share. And it confronts us with the trust between a parent and a child that can never disappear despite arguments and growing up. Now let's look at some key quotes. We're going to look at 3 key quotes, one from the beginning, one from the middle, and one from the end. I would suggest that you pause the video after each box has appeared and then make notes on these. So our first quote is, "Our first fierce confrontation." There we have then clear examples of analysis for this first quote. The second quote, "Still I am fighting you off," comes from the middle of the poem. Once again, ideas appearing round the outside. And freeze this video if you wish to make notes. And lastly, at the end of the poem, the tight red rope of love, which we both fought over. And once again, pause the video as necessary to make notes on the choices the poet has made. Now we're going to look at how to write an essay based on the notes you've just seen. A step structure for this could be used. You can see a 9-part structure on the board with the key elements focused on there in red/orange. This would then, each one of these steps would form one sentence of your response. Make a clear statement, use your poet knowledge, use several short quotes, add a 5-word quote and then explain why the quote was important in the poem, then analyse a word from the quote, then comment on enjambment or sentence structure, then comment on tone, the mood or atmosphere of the poem, and then look at your own opinion. Give your opinion based on what you think about the poet, based on the language choices and structural choices they've made. If you put all these 9 steps together, that forms one paragraph. And you'd simply repeat this structure for the start, middle, and end of the poem. What follows next is a full example then of an essay written about Gillian Clarke's poem Catrin. We start with our introduction, a simple summary of the poet and indeed what she's writing about, what her meaning of the poem actually is. I then look at the start of the poem, making a point first, then choosing a quote and explaining it, zooming in on specific details of that quote to then explain in more depth. I've used 1, 2, 3 quotes in this response and gone on to explain them in quite a bit of detail with a bit of structure added on at the bottom of this paragraph for good measure. I move into the middle of the poem next as I begin to explore how the poet has changed or how the theme of the poem has changed by the middle of the poem. I'm still using quotes and explaining them, and you'll notice in the centre I also mention a bit of context about Clarke herself, using some of the notes we've already made. And lastly, at the end of my response, I look, fairly obviously, at the end of the poem and what seems to be the theme by then. What's changed? what stayed the same, what is interesting to note by the end, and what I, as the person being examined, take away from the poem. What do I think or feel about it? Well, I hope this video has been really useful. I apologise for the typos, but hopefully that hasn't stopped you from understanding what this poem's all about. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.